Hi, everyone. My name's Charles Klein, and I never thought I'd be the guy writing on a forum like this. But here I am, staring at my screen, trying to figure out where it all went wrong. I guess I should start from the beginning because, honestly, I don't know where else to start. I grew up in a small, hard-working town where folks knew each other by name, and neighbors helped each other out. My parents weren't rich, but they made sure we had what we needed. My dad ran a modest auto repair shop, and my mom worked part-time at a diner. They taught me the value of honesty and hard work. I carried those lessons with me, believing that if you gave your best, life would reward you in kind. When I met Haley, it felt like life was rewarding me. She was everything I wasn't, outgoing, fiery, and the kind of woman who could light up a room just by walking into it. I first saw her at a summer festival. She was laughing with a group of friends, her long blonde hair catching the light, and I swear my heart stopped. I was too nervous to approach her at first, but fate worked its magic when we bumped into each other at the lemonade stand. She spilled her drink, and I awkwardly offered mine to make up for it. That clumsy gesture turned into a conversation, which turned into a date, and before I knew it, we were inseparable. Our romance moved fast. Within 6 months, we were engaged, and 6 months after that, married. Everyone said we were rushing, but we didn't care. When you know, right? I thought I'd hit the jackpot. Haley was beautiful, smart, and had this energy about her that made me feel like I could do anything. The first couple of years were great. We bought a small house on the edge of town and welcomed our daughter Tina, not long after. I was over the moon, working overtime at the auto shop to provide for my family. Haley stayed home with Tina, and life felt full of promise. But somewhere along the way, things started to shift. Looking back, I wonder if the cracks were always there, and I just didn't see them. Maybe I didn't want to. Haley began to complain more, about the house, the town, and even me. I chalked it up to stress. Having a young child isn't easy, and money was tight, but I was doing everything I could to make things better. I didn't realize that no matter how hard I worked, it would never be enough for her. T was around our 3rd year of marriage when things started to feel off. Haley became distant. At first, it was little things, like how she'd roll her eyes when I'd try to joke around with her, or how she'd spend more time scrolling through her phone than talking to me after I came home from work. She seemed less interested in the small everyday joys we used to share, like sitting on the porch with a cup of coffee or watching Tina play in the yard. I remember one day vividly. Tina had just started preschool, and she'd drawn this adorable picture of our family, stick figures holding hands under a bright yellow sun. She was so proud, running up to Haley to show her. But Haley barely glanced at it before muttering, "That's nice, honey," and going back to whatever was on her phone. Tina's face fell, and I felt this pang of anger mixed with sadness. I didn't say anything at the time. I just scooped Tina up, told her how amazing her drawing was, and stuck it to the fridge. But moments like that kept piling up. The fights started soon after. At first, they were about money. Haley hated that we couldn't afford the lifestyle she wanted. She'd compare us to her old friends from college who seemed to be living these glamorous lives on social media. "Why can't we ever go on vacations like they do?" she'd ask, her voice sharp. I tried to explain that with my paycheck and our bills, there just wasn't any room for extras. I'd even started picking up side jobs, detailing cars on weekends and doing handyman work, but it never seemed to make a difference. From there, the arguments shifted to deeper things. Haley started questioning everything about our life together. "Do you ever think we settled too quickly?" she asked me one night, out of the blue. Her words hit like a punch to the gut. I didn't know how to answer, because to me, there was nothing to regret. I loved her, and I loved the family we'd built. But to Haley, it seemed like those feelings weren't enough anymore. Then came the coldness toward Tina. I don't know when it started, but I began noticing how impatient Haley was with her, snapping over little things, barely showing her the affection that used to come so easily. It broke my heart to see Tina try so hard to make her mom happy, only to be met with indifference. I told myself it was just a phase, that Haley was overwhelmed or going through something I didn't understand. I tried to step up more, giving her breaks whenever I could. But no matter what I did, the distance between us kept growing. Looking back, maybe I should have seen the signs. Maybe I should have confronted her about what was really going on. But at the time, I was too scared to rock the boat. I wanted to believe we could get back to the way things used to be. I clung to the hope that if I just worked harder, loved her more, and kept the peace, everything would be okay. I was wrong to be why our 5th year of marriage, the Haley I had fallen in love with was almost unrecognizable. She was still beautiful, she could walk into a room and draw every eye without even trying, but the warmth, the kindness, the spark I'd loved, it was gone. She was colder, sharper. Everything about our life seemed to annoy her, the house, my job, even the town we lived in. She'd make these comments like, "I feel like I'm trapped in this dead-end life," or, "I didn't think this is where I'd end up." Hearing her talk like that hurt, but I kept telling myself it was just frustration. Everyone has moments where life doesn't turn out how they planned, right? But deep down, I think I knew it was more than that. Then there was Trent. I can't think about this story without mentioning him. Trent was one of those guys you just don't like the second you meet them. He was slick, arrogant, and had this smug smile like he knew something you didn't. He worked at Haley's office, and from the first time she brought him up in conversation, I didn't trust him. "Oh, Trent's hilarious," she said one evening, scrolling through her phone. "He makes work bearable." I asked her who he was, and she shrugged. "Just a coworker," she said. But the way she said it, the lightness in her tone, the way her face softened, didn't sit right with me. Over the next few months, I started hearing his name more often. Trent said the funniest thing today. Trent was so sweet, he brought coffee for the whole team. Trent's such a great listener. It wasn't long before I started noticing how much time she spent texting or smiling at her phone, and I had a sinking feeling I knew who she was talking to. I brought it up once. "You seem pretty close with Trent," I said casually, trying to mask the unease in my voice. She looked at me like I'd said something ridiculous. "Don't be paranoid, Charles," she snapped. "He's just a friend." God, you're so insecure. I backed off, feeling ashamed for even bringing it up. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe I was just projecting my own insecurities onto her. But no matter how much I tried to push those thoughts aside, they wouldn't leave me alone. The nights she stayed late at work became more frequent. "We're under a big deadline," she'd say, her voice laced with irritation when I asked why she was coming home so late. "Do you want me to lose my job?" Of course, I didn't. So I kept quiet. I'd sit at home, trying to convince myself that I was imagining things, that she wouldn't betray me like that. Haley was my wife, the mother of my child. We'd built a life together. She wouldn't throw it all away, right? But the distance between us only grew. She was on her phone constantly, but she'd tilt the screen away when I walked by. We stopped spending time together. She barely acknowledged me most days. And then there was Tina. It was like Haley couldn't even stand to look at her anymore. If Tina spilled her juice or asked too many questions, Haley's patience snapped in an instant. I tried to shield Tina as much as I could, but I was walking on eggshells too. There was this one night I'll never forget. I came home from work late, dirty and tired after a long day at the shop, and found Haley sitting on the couch, laughing at something on her phone. She looked up at me, and for a split second, there was this look of disappointment in her eyes. She didn't even ask how my day was. Just went back to her phone. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, feeling like I was losing her. I didn't know how to fix it. I wasn't sure I even could. But I still never expected what came next. I didn't plan on coming home early that day. It was a Friday, and the shop had been busy all week. I'd been looking forward to the weekend, thinking maybe I could convince Haley to spend some time with Tina and me, just the three of us, like old times. I thought maybe, just maybe, I could remind her of what we had. Around noon, my boss sent me home early. "You've been putting in too many hours, Charles," he said. "Go home, take a break." I should have been excited. An afternoon off was rare for me. But instead of feeling happy, I felt nervous. Like something was telling me I wasn't ready to face what I'd find when I walked through that door. The house was quiet when I pulled into the driveway. Tina was at school, and I figured Haley would probably be out running errands or scrolling through her phone in the living room. I grabbed my toolbox from the truck, planning to fix the loose cabinet hinge in the kitchen before she got back. As I stepped inside, I noticed something strange. Haley's car was in the driveway, but the house felt off. Too still. Too quiet. I called out her name. No answer. I walked through the house, my boots heavy on the hardwood floors. The air felt thick, like it was holding its breath. That's when I heard it, a muffled laugh coming from upstairs. A man's laugh. My heart dropped. I froze at the bottom of the stairs, my mind racing, trying to convince myself I was hearing things. But there it was again. This time, I heard Haley's voice too, light and teasing, a tone I hadn't heard in years. I climbed the stairs slowly, each step feeling like I was dragging the weight of my entire life behind me. The laughter grew louder, coming from our bedroom. I reached the door, my hand hovering over the doorknob, my breath shallow and shaky. When I opened the door, the sight before me shattered whatever was left of the world I thought I knew. Haley was in bed, tangled up with Trent, the man I had spent months silently hating. She didn't notice me at first. They were laughing, completely oblivious to the fact that their secret had just been exposed. When Haley finally looked up and saw me standing there, her laughter died instantly. Her face went pale, and for a moment we just stared at each other, the room so silent it felt like the air had been sucked out. "What the hell is this?" I managed to choke out, my voice barely more than a whisper. Haley scrambled to pull the sheet over herself while Trent just smirked, like he wasn't the least bit sorry. "This isn't what it looks like," she stammered, her voice shaking. "It's exactly what it looks like," I said, my anger boiling over. I couldn't stop myself. I lunged forward, grabbing Haley's arm, not hard, but enough to make her look at me. "How could you do this? To me? To Tina?" Haley yanked her arm away, her face twisting in anger. "Don't you dare turn this on me, Charles," she snapped. "If you weren't such a boring, pathetic excuse for a husband, maybe I wouldn't have to find happiness somewhere else." Her words cut deeper than any knife. I turned to Trent, who had the audacity to sit there, calm and smug. "You think this is funny?" I growled, stepping toward him. He stood up, clearly ready for a fight, but I stopped myself. I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction. Instead, I turned back to Haley. "Get out," I said, my voice low and firm. "Both of you. Get out of my house." Haley laughed bitterly. "Your house? Please, Charles. I've been carrying you for years. You think I don't deserve better than this?" She gestured around the room like it disgusted her. I couldn't take it anymore. I reached for her, not to hurt her, but just to make her stop, to make her see what she was doing. In that moment, Haley screamed like I'd attacked her, and Trent stepped in, shoving me back. I stumbled, and before I knew it, she was on the phone, calling the cops. When they arrived, I was the one they took away. "Domestic disturbance," they said, as Haley stood there crying fake tears. I couldn't even defend myself. All I could think about was Tina, who had no idea her world was about to fall apart. I spent that night in a holding cell, staring at the gray walls and replaying everything over and over in my head. The image of Haley in bed with Trent was burned into my mind, and her words, those cruel, cutting words, echoed like a broken record. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't think. I just sat there, hollowed out, wondering how my life had spiraled so far out of control. When they finally let me go the next morning, I didn't go straight home. I drove around aimlessly, trying to figure out what to do next. Part of me hoped that when I walked back into the house, Haley would be gone, and I could just start picking up the pieces. But when I got there, I found her in the kitchen, calm as could be, like nothing had happened. "Tina's at school," she said casually, not even looking up as I walked in. "We need to talk." I ignored her and started walking toward the stairs, but her next words stopped me cold. "I'm taking Tina," she said, her voice steady and full of finality. "I've already talked to a lawyer." I turned around, my heart racing. "What are you talking about? You can't just take her." Haley crossed her arms, her expression hard. "I'm filing for divorce, Charles. And after what happened yesterday, there's no way the court is going to side with you. You're unstable. You're violent." I stared at her in disbelief. "You're the one who cheated," I said, my voice shaking. "You're the one who destroyed this family. How can you stand there and act like this is my fault?" Haley shrugged, her calm demeanor only making me angrier. "I didn't destroy anything, Charles. Our marriage was over long before Trent. I just had the guts to do something about it." Her words knocked the wind out of me. I wanted to argue, to scream, but I knew it wouldn't make a difference. She'd already made up her mind. The next few weeks were a blur of paperwork, court hearings, and gut-wrenching visits with lawyers. Haley had taken our joint savings, every penny I'd worked so hard to save, and used it to hire one of the best divorce attorneys in town. Meanwhile, I was left scrambling, borrowing money from friends and family just to afford someone to represent me. The court process was brutal. Haley painted me as an angry, unstable husband who'd lashed out at her in a fit of rage. She conveniently left out the part where I'd caught her with another man. I tried to tell my side of the story, but without hard evidence, it didn't matter. The judge ruled in her favor, granting her full custody of Tina and giving me limited visitation rights. I'll never forget the day the ruling came down. I sat in that courtroom, feeling like the walls were closing in on me, while Haley sat across the room, calm and composed, like she'd just won a game. And maybe she had. Afterward, she didn't waste any time moving out. She packed up her things, and Tina's, and left without a second glance. The house felt so empty without them. I couldn't even look at Tina's room without breaking down. And that's how it all fell apart. In the span of a few weeks, I lost my wife, my daughter, and the life I'd spent years building. Haley walked away with everything, Tina the money, even the car I'd bought for her. And I was left with nothing but a stack of bills, an empty house, and a heart that felt like it had been ripped to shreds. But the worst part? Tina didn't understand what was happening. She cried the first time I saw her after the move, asking why she couldn't come home, why mommy and daddy couldn't be together anymore. I had no answers for her. All I could do was hold her and promise that I'd always be there, even if it didn't feel that way right now. It was a promise I intended to keep, no matter what. But keeping it wouldn't be easy, not with everything Haley was about to throw at me next. After Haley took Tina and moved out, I thought maybe things would settle down. Not in the sense that everything would magically be okay, but at least the constant chaos might ease up. Turns out I was wrong, dead wrong. If anything, Haley ramped things up, and it felt like her new mission in life was to make mine as miserable as possible. It started with the lies. Haley wasn't just content with walking away with Tina and the money, she wanted to make sure everyone thought she was the victim. Suddenly, the story around town was that I had always been controlling, emotionally unstable, and prone to outbursts. The worst part? She painted herself as the long-suffering wife who'd finally had enough and left for the sake of her child. I'd hear whispers at the grocery store, see people exchanging glances at the gas station. Even guys I'd known for years started keeping their distance. One coworker straight up asked me, "So, what really happened with you and Haley?" When I tried to explain, he just nodded, clearly unconvinced, before walking away. But Haley didn't stop at just trashing my reputation. She went after my time with Tina, too. Those limited visitation rights the court had granted me? Haley found ways to make even that feel impossible. She'd claim Tina was sick or had a special event that couldn't be missed. When I did get to see her, Haley would show up late for drop-offs or cut the visit short, claiming she had something urgent to do. One time, Haley sent Tina to my house with nothing but a few mismatched clothes stuffed into a backpack. No toothbrush, no pajamas, nothing. When I asked Tina where the rest of her things were, she shrugged and said, "Mommy said you should have been ready." That's when it hit me. Haley wasn't just making things difficult, she was setting me up to fail. She wanted Tina to think I wasn't capable of taking care of her, like I was some kind of deadbeat dad. I didn't know how to fight back. Every time I tried to explain things to Tina, I'd see the confusion in her eyes, and it broke me. She was just a little girl, caught in the middle of something she didn't understand. And Haley? She seemed to thrive on the drama. It was like she enjoyed twisting the knife a little deeper every chance she got. Then came the worst lie of all. One evening, during a rare phone call with Tina, she asked me something that stopped me cold. "Daddy, why did you hurt Mommy?" My heart sank. "What are you talking about, sweetheart?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Mommy said that's why we can't live with you," she said, her voice small and unsure. "Because you hurt her." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Haley was telling Tina that I was dangerous, that I'd hurt her, when the truth was, I'd never laid a hand on her in anger. Not once. It was a lie so cruel, so calculated, that I could barely process it. That night, I sat alone in my empty house, staring at Tina's crayon drawing still stuck to the fridge. A happy family, holding hands under a bright yellow sun. It was the kind of picture you'd see in a therapist's office, the kind that's supposed to show what a child wants most in the world. And Haley was taking that away from her, not just me, but the idea of us as a family. I knew I couldn't let Haley keep spinning her web of lies. But fighting back felt impossible. She had the money, the upper hand in court, and a way of twisting every situation to make herself look like the victim. All I had was the truth, and in the face of everything Haley was doing, it didn't feel like enough. But I couldn't give up. For Tina's sake, I had to find a way to push through, to show her that her dad wasn't the monster Haley was making me out to be. The question was, how? I couldn't let Haley's lies be the only version of the story Tina heard. It wasn't just about clearing my name, it was about making sure my daughter knew I loved her and that I'd never do anything to hurt her. But figuring out how to fight back against someone like Haley felt impossible. She was 2 steps ahead, always twisting the narrative in her favor. The first step was finding a lawyer who believed in me. The first one I hired during the divorce had done what he could, but he didn't seem invested in my case. This time, I needed someone who wouldn't back down. A buddy of mine put me in touch with a family attorney known for taking on tough custody cases. Her name was Lisa, and from the moment we met, I felt like I had someone in my corner. Lisa didn't sugarcoat anything. It's going to be an uphill battle, she told me, flipping through my case file. But if Haley's as manipulative as you say she is, we can use that to show the court who she really is. She suggested we start by documenting everything: missed visitations, late drop-offs, anything Tina said that hinted at Haley's lies. The more proof we have, the stronger your case will be, Lisa said. I started keeping a notebook, writing down every interaction with Haley and every visit with Tina. I even began recording drop-offs on my phone, just in case Haley tried to accuse me of anything. It felt weird at first, like I was preparing for war. But after everything she'd already done, I didn't see another choice. Things came to a head one weekend when Haley canceled my scheduled visitation at the last minute, again. This time, her excuse was that Tina had a school project and couldn't come over. I knew it was a lie because Tina had mentioned during our last call that she'd finished all her homework early. I decided I wasn't going to let it slide. I called Lisa, and she filed a motion to enforce the visitation order. When we got to court, Haley tried to play the victim, claiming I was harassing her and that she was only protecting Tina. But Lisa wasn't having it. She brought out my notebook, the recordings, and even a few text messages where Haley had blatantly contradicted herself. For the first time, I saw Haley's composure crack. The judge didn't change custody, but he issued a stern warning about following the visitation schedule and keeping our co-parenting in the best interest of the child. It wasn't much, but it felt like a small victory. Haley couldn't just cancel visits on a whim anymore without facing consequences. But the real win came later that week during one of my visits with Tina. We were sitting in the park, eating ice cream, when she looked up at me and said, "Mommy said you're mad at her because she's happy now. Is that true?" I took a deep breath. "No, sweetheart," I said gently. "I'm not mad that Mommy's happy. I'm just sad that we can't all be together anymore." She nodded, thinking it over. "Do you still love Mommy?" That question caught me off guard. I didn't want to lie, but I also didn't want to say something that would hurt her. "I'll always care about Mommy because she gave me the best gift in the world, you," I said, brushing a strand of hair out of her face. "But sometimes, grown-ups just can't be together anymore, even if they wish they could." Tina didn't say anything for a while, just licked her ice cream and stared at the ducks in the pond. Then she leaned against me and whispered, "I'm glad you're still my daddy." I felt tears sting my eyes as I held her close. In that moment, I knew I had to keep fighting. Not just for more time with her, but for her trust, her love, and her understanding that none of this was her fault. Winning custody wasn't going to be easy, and I wasn't sure if it was even possible. But I'd fight tooth and nail for every moment I could spend with my little girl. Haley might have taken almost everything from me, but she wasn't going to take Tina, not completely. Not without a fight. I decided to fight for Tina, no matter how uphill the battle seemed. With Lisa, my new lawyer, I started documenting everything: missed visits, Haley's excuses, and any time she twisted things to make me look bad. It felt strange, like preparing for war, but it was necessary. One day, Haley canceled another visit, claiming Tina was busy with a school project. I knew it wasn't true and took the issue to court. Lisa presented my notes, recordings, and texts that showed Haley's pattern of manipulation. The judge didn't change custody but warned Haley to stick to the schedule. It wasn't a huge win, but it was something. The real victory came later during a visit with Tina. We were at the park, eating ice cream, when she asked, "Do you still love Mommy?" I hesitated but told her I'd always care about her mom because she gave me Tina. "But sometimes, grown-ups just can't stay together," I said softly. Tina leaned into me and whispered, "I'm glad you're still my daddy." It hit me like a wave. No matter what Haley did, Tina still saw me for who I really was. That small moment gave me the strength to keep fighting. Even when the odds seemed stacked against me, just when I thought things might stabilize, Haley found new ways to stir the pot. She started using Tina to get under my skin, telling her things no child should hear. "Daddy doesn't care about us," Tina said one day during a visit. "Mommy says that's why we had to leave." I felt my stomach drop. "That's not true, sweetheart," I said gently. "I love you more than anything. You know that, right?" Tina nodded, but I could see the confusion in her eyes. It crushed me knowing Haley was planting seeds of doubt in her mind. Around this time, Haley started pushing for supervised visits, claiming I was unstable and unfit to be alone with Tina. She filed a motion, dragging me back into court. Thankfully, Lisa was ready. She brought up the judge's earlier warnings and showed that I'd been following every rule, while Haley was the one causing unnecessary conflict. The court denied Haley's request, but the damage was done. Tina was quieter during our visits, like she didn't know who to believe anymore. Every time I dropped her off, I wondered if Haley's lies would undo everything I'd worked so hard to rebuild. I realized Haley wasn't going to stop. If I wanted to protect my relationship with Tina, I had to keep my focus on proving I was the steady, loving parent Tina could count on, no matter what Haley threw my way. Tina's birthday was coming up, and I wanted it to be special, a day she'd remember for the right reasons. I planned a small party at my house, complete with decorations, her favorite cake, and a few gifts I'd saved up for. Haley agreed to let me have Tina for the day, but her tone on the phone made it clear she wasn't happy about it. The day started well. Tina loved the balloons I put up and beamed when she saw the unicorn-themed cake. We spent the afternoon playing games and laughing. For a few hours, it felt like things were normal again, just me and my little girl. But Haley couldn't let it go smoothly. She showed up an hour early to pick Tina up, wearing an outfit that screamed, "I'm doing better without you." She barely acknowledged the decorations or the effort I'd put into the day. "Ready to go, sweetie," she said to Tina, ignoring me entirely. Tina's face fell. "But we didn't open presents yet, Mommy," she said. Haley hesitated, then forced a smile. "Okay, 5 minutes," she said, but I could see her impatience. Tina opened her gifts while Haley stood by the door, arms crossed. When it was time to leave, Tina hugged me tightly. "Thank you, Daddy. I had the best day." Her words stayed with me long after they left. Even with Haley's interruptions, I'd given Tina a day to feel loved and celebrated. It was a small victory, but it reminded me why I was fighting so hard, to be the dad she needed. No matter how much Haley tried to overshadow it. After Tina's birthday, I thought maybe Haley would ease up, but instead, she doubled down. She started spreading more rumors around town, painting me as an absentee father and even accusing me of being irresponsible during my time with Tina. It felt like everywhere I went, people were looking at me differently, whispering, judging. One day, a teacher at Tina's school called me. "Mr. Klein, I just wanted to check in," she said carefully. "Tina mentioned some things about your visits. I thought it might be best to hear directly from you." I could tell the teacher wasn't accusing me of anything, but the fact that Haley's words were now creeping into Tina's school life made my blood boil. I calmly explained the situation and assured her that Tina was always safe and cared for when she was with me. The teacher seemed understanding, but the call left me shaken. Haley's tactics weren't just about custody anymore. They were about isolating me, cutting me off from any support system I had left. Friends started avoiding me, neighbors gave me cold stares, and even people at work started asking questions. Despite it all, I kept my focus on Tina. Every visit, I made sure she felt safe and loved. We played her favorite games, worked on school projects, and I never let her see how much Haley's campaign was getting to me. One evening, as I was tucking her in during an overnight visit, Tina looked up at me and said, "Daddy, why do people say mean things about you?" I swallowed the lump in my throat and kissed her forehead. "Sometimes people don't understand the whole story, sweetheart," I said. "But you know me, don't you? You know who I really am." Tina nodded and hugged me tightly. "I do, Daddy." That moment was all the reassurance I needed to keep going. Haley could lie to the world, but as long as Tina knew the truth, I had something worth fighting for. By the time I realized the extent of Haley's lies, it was clear she wasn't going to stop until I was completely cut out of Tina's life. Every missed visit, every manipulative comment, every rumor spread around town, it was all designed to make me look like the villain. But I wasn't about to let her win. Not when it came to my daughter. Lisa and I prepared to take Haley back to court, this time filing for a modification to the custody agreement. It wasn't just about getting more time with Tina, it was about protecting her from Haley's toxic behavior. The lies, the alienation, the way Haley used Tina as a pawn, It all had to stop. The weeks leading up to the hearing were grueling. Lisa coached me on everything, from how to present myself in court to how to handle Haley's accusations without losing my cool. "She's going to try to provoke you," Lisa warned. "Don't take the bait. Stay calm, stick to the facts, and let me do the heavy lifting." When the day finally came, my stomach was in knots. Walking into that courtroom, seeing Haley sitting there with her high-priced attorney, I felt like David facing Goliath. She looked smug, like she'd already won. But I wasn't the same man who'd been blindsided during the divorce. I was ready to fight. The first part of the hearing was brutal. Haley's attorney painted a picture of me as a bitter, unstable ex-husband who couldn't accept the divorce. He brought up the incident when I caught Haley with Trent, twisting it to make it seem like I'd been violent and out of control. They even tried to claim that Tina had been traumatized by my behavior, using Haley's hearsay as evidence. It took everything I had to keep my composure. I wanted to shout, to defend myself right then and there, but Lisa had warned me this would happen. Instead, I sat there, clenched my fists under the table, and let Lisa dismantle their arguments one by one. When it was my turn to speak, I told the court about my relationship with Tina. I talked about how much I loved her, how I'd always tried to be there for her, even when Haley made it difficult. I brought up the documented missed visitations, the false accusations, and the times Haley had blatantly ignored the court's orders. But the most important part came when Lisa presented Tina's teacher as a witness. She testified that Tina often spoke positively about her time with me and had never shown any signs of fear or distress during our visits. It was a huge blow to Haley's case, one she hadn't seen coming. The final piece of evidence was a series of text messages between Haley and her friends, which Lisa had subpoenaed. In them, Haley bragged about making my life difficult and even admitted to using Tina as leverage. Seeing those messages up on the screen, I felt a mix of anger and vindication. For the first time, Haley's mask slipped, and the court saw her for who she really was. When the judge finally made his ruling, it wasn't the complete victory I'd hoped for, but it was a step in the right direction. My visitation schedule was expanded, giving me more consistent time with Tina. The judge also issued a warning to Haley, stating that any further interference could result in consequences, including a re-evaluation of custody. As I left the courtroom, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. Haley glared at me as I walked past, but for once, her confidence seemed shaken. I didn't gloat or say anything to her. This wasn't about winning against her, it was about Tina. That evening, during my first extended visit with Tina, we celebrated with her favorite pizza and a movie night. As she snuggled up next to me on the couch, laughing at the silly cartoon on the screen, I realized that this fight, no matter how draining, no matter how long, was worth it. Tina deserved a parent who put her first, who loved her unconditionally. And no matter what Haley did, I was determined to be that parent for her. The court ruling felt like a small victory, but I knew it wouldn't be enough to stop Haley. She wasn't the type to admit defeat gracefully, and it didn't take long for her to show her hand. If anything, the expanded visitation rights seemed to fuel her determination to make my life harder. It started with little things. She began showing up late for drop-offs again, her excuses growing more absurd each time. Traffic was awful, she'd say, even though there wasn't a single car behind her when she pulled up. Once, she claimed she'd forgotten it was my weekend, despite the court-ordered schedule being taped to her fridge. I kept documenting everything. Every late drop-off, every flimsy excuse, every snide comment she made in front of Tina. But Haley wasn't content to stop there. She started targeting my relationship with Tina more directly, planting doubts and using subtle manipulation to turn her against me. One evening during a visit, Tina hesitated before eating the dinner I'd made. "Mommy says you don't know how to cook healthy food," she said quietly, pushing her peas around with her fork. I forced myself to smile and shrugged it off, even though it stung. "Well, let's prove Mommy wrong, huh? Try one bite and tell me what you think." She did, and her face lit up. "It's good," she said, grinning. Moments like that reminded me that Haley's words didn't carry as much weight as our time together, but they still left cracks in Tina's trust that I had to work harder to mend. Haley also began interrogating Tina after our visits, something Tina eventually mentioned during one of our bedtime talks. "Mommy always asks what we did," she said. "She says I need to tell her everything so she knows I'm safe." That broke my heart. Tina was just a little girl, caught in the crossfire of Haley's schemes. I reassured her as best I could, saying, "You can always tell Mommy what we do if you want to, sweetheart. But you're always safe with me, and I hope you know that. Still, the damage was being done, and I knew I couldn't fight back against Haley's lies alone. Lisa suggested we bring in a therapist to evaluate the situation and help Tina navigate the tension between her parents. Haley initially resisted, claiming it was unnecessary and that Tina was perfectly fine, but the court sided with me, appointing a child psychologist to observe and mediate. The first few sessions were tough. Tina was shy, clearly unsure about opening up in front of a stranger. But as the weeks went on, she began to share more. I never pried about what she said during the sessions, but the therapist later told me, "Tina's confused by the mixed messages she's getting at home and with you. It's clear she loves you both, but Haley's creating an environment that makes her feel torn." The psychologist's report was eye-opening. It confirmed what I'd suspected all along. Haley was using her influence over Tina to try to push me out. While the court didn't make any immediate changes to custody, the report was added to our case file as evidence of Haley's harmful behavior. It was another small step, but it gave me hope that the truth was slowly coming to light. Meanwhile, Haley found new ways to retaliate. One day, during a pickup at her house, she came to the door looking frazzled and angry. "Tina can't go with you today," she said, blocking the doorway. "What are you talking about?" I asked, trying to stay calm. "It's my scheduled weekend." "She's sick," Haley snapped, crossing her arms. "You wouldn't want her getting worse, would you?" Before I could argue, Tina peeked around the corner, looking perfectly fine. "Hi, Daddy," she said cheerfully. I crouched down to meet her eyes. "Hey, sweetheart. Are you feeling okay?" She nodded. "I feel good," Mommy said. Haley cut her off sharply. "Tina, go back to your room. Now." Tina looked confused but obeyed, and Haley turned back to me, her expression hard. "I said she's not going. You can try taking this to court if you want, but good luck explaining why you're willing to risk her health." It was infuriating, but I knew better than to escalate. I recorded the interaction on my phone and left, calling Lisa as soon as I got in the car. "She's pushing boundaries again," I said. Lisa reassured me we'd address it, but every time something like this happened, it felt like I was taking one step forward and 2 steps back. Despite all of Haley's efforts, my time with Tina remained a bright spot in the chaos. We built a routine together, movie nights, trips to the park, working on her school projects. She even started asking to help me with little things around the house, like washing dishes or fixing things in the garage. I could see her confidence growing, and it made me proud to know I was helping her feel safe and loved. Still, Haley's relentless attacks weighed on me. The late nights documenting incidents, the constant stress of court battles, the whispers around town, it was exhausting. But every time I looked at Tina's smiling face, I reminded myself why I couldn't give up. Haley might have taken almost everything from me, but she wasn't going to take my daughter, not without a fight. After months of back-and-forth battles, the strain on everyone was showing, on me, on Haley, and most heartbreakingly, on Tina. It was clear the constant tug-of-war was taking a toll on her, and as much as I hated Haley for what she was doing, I couldn't deny that the situation was hurting our daughter. One evening during a visit, Tina and I were working on a puzzle at the kitchen table. She had grown quiet, her little hands fumbling with the pieces. I could tell something was on her mind. "Daddy," she said softly, not looking up from the puzzle. "Do you and Mommy hate each other?" Her question hit me like a punch to the gut. I paused, trying to figure out how to answer. "No, sweetheart," I said carefully. "I don't hate Mommy. We just don't agree on some things, and that's why we live in different houses now." Tina frowned, still not meeting my eyes. "Mommy says you're mean to her," she said quietly. "She says you're why we can't all be together." I felt my throat tighten. "That's not true," I said gently. "You know I'd do anything to keep our family together. But sometimes, grown-ups have problems that are too big to fix." She finally looked up at me, her big questioning eyes searching mine. "Mommy says you don't want me to be happy." I set the puzzle piece in my hand down and reached across the table to hold hers. "Tina, listen to me," I said, my voice steady but full of emotion. "You are the most important thing in my life. Everything I do, every fight I have with Mommy, it's all because I love you and want you to be happy." Tina's lip quivered, and she leaned forward, climbing into my lap and burying her face in my chest. "I love you, Daddy," she whispered. I held her close, blinking back tears. "I love you too, sweetheart. So much." After that night, something shifted. Tina seemed to open up more during our visits. sharing things about her life at Haley's house that she'd been too scared to talk about before. She mentioned how Haley often criticized me when I wasn't around, saying things like, "Daddy doesn't know how to take care of you," or "Daddy doesn't love us the way I do." Hearing those words made my blood boil, but I stayed calm for Tina's sake. "You know that's not true, right?" I asked her one day. She nodded slowly. "I know," she said. "But it's hard when Mommy says it a lot." I realized then that this wasn't just a legal battle, it was a fight for Tina's sense of security, her ability to trust and feel loved. Haley was using her words like weapons, trying to poison the bond I'd worked so hard to build. With Lisa's help, I filed a motion to address Haley's behavior directly. We requested a court-mandated co-parenting counselor, someone who could monitor how Haley and I interacted with Tina and ensure she wasn't being used as a pawn. Haley, predictably, fought it tooth and nail, but the judge sided with me, citing the psychologist's earlier report as evidence that Tina was being negatively affected by the conflict. The counselor's involvement brought new challenges but also new hope. During our sessions, Haley's manipulative tactics were harder to hide. When she tried to justify her behavior, the counselor pushed back, reminding her that Tina's well-being came first. It was satisfying to see someone finally hold Haley accountable, even if it was only in small ways. For Tina, the sessions seemed to provide a bit of relief. She started asking fewer questions about why Mommy and Daddy were fighting and instead focused on just being a kid. During one session, she drew a picture of our family, me, her, and Haley, holding hands under a bright yellow sun, just like the one on my fridge. "It's how I feel when we're all getting along," she said quietly, showing the picture to the counselor. That image stuck with me. It reminded me that no matter how much Haley tried to twist things, Tina still wanted us both in her life. She just needed one of us to fight for her peace, her happiness, her future. And I was determined to be that person. The court battles, the counseling sessions, the constant tension, it all felt endless, but slowly, things began to shift. With the co-parenting counselor involved, Haley's manipulations became harder to pull off. She was forced to answer for her behavior, and while it didn't change her completely, it curbed some of the worst of it. Tina seemed lighter, more at ease. She no longer hesitated to share stories about her time at my house, and our visits started to feel less like stolen moments and more like genuine father-daughter time. She laughed more, played more, and even asked to keep some of her favorite toys at my place, calling it her second home. Hearing her say that melted away so much of the bitterness I'd been holding on to. The final breakthrough came during one of our court-mandated co-parenting sessions. Haley was being her usual dismissive self, brushing off the counselor's comments about the importance of supporting Tina's relationship with me. But when Tina's name came up, something changed. "Do you think this is easy for her?" the counselor asked Haley pointedly. "Tina sees how the two of you treat each other. She hears the things you say. If you can't work together, you'll only hurt her more." For a moment, Haley seemed to falter. Her confident facade cracked just enough for me to see a flicker of guilt. She didn't apologize or admit to anything, but the tension in her shoulders eased, and for the first time, she agreed to make an effort. Real or not, it was a step. A few weeks later, during one of my visits, Tina handed me another drawing. This one was different from the others. It was just the two of us, sitting on a bench under a tree, with the words "I love you, Daddy" scrawled in big, colorful letters. I asked her why she'd drawn it, and she smiled shyly. "Because I feel happy when I'm with you." That drawing now hangs on my wall, a daily reminder of everything I've fought for. It's been months since the last court hearing, and while things with Haley will probably never be friendly, they're more manageable. The counselor remains involved, and I still document everything, but the atmosphere feels less like a battlefield now. Tina's doing better too. She's thriving at school, making friends, and growing into this incredible little person who makes me proud every day. And while I still miss the family I thought we'd have, I've learned to focus on the family I do have. My bond with Tina is stronger than ever, and that's something Haley can never take away. Starting over hasn't been easy. There are still days when the weight of everything hits me, when I think about the life I lost and the man I used to be. But there are also moments of peace, like when Tina curls up beside me during a movie night or calls me to share something exciting from her day. Those moments remind me that life goes on, even after betrayal. I've stopped trying to understand why Haley did what she did. Some questions don't have answers, and that's okay. What matters is that I've come out the other side, bruised but not broken, and I've built a new life for myself and my daughter. One step at a time, I'm moving forward. And for the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm enough.